Here is part 1 of your rewritten story. I have changed the character names, made it more cinematic and emotionally powerful, and kept every major event and detail. I will continue with part 2 after this. They say justice is blind. But inside Judge Harold Whitmore's courtroom, justice wasn't just blind, it was chained, gagged, and shoved out the back door. Everyone in the small town of Redwood Hollow understood the unspoken rule. If you were rich and connected, the law bent politely in your favor. If you looked like Evelyn Brooks, you were guilty before you even opened your mouth. When Judge Whitmore saw the older black woman standing before his bench in a faded tourist sweatshirt and worn sneakers, he didn't see intelligence. He saw a joke. He laughed at her. He mocked her tone. He treated her like background noise. What he didn't realize was that the woman he tried to humiliate wasn't just another defendant. She was the most powerful legal mind in the country, and she hadn't come for mercy. She had come for judgment. The woman in the hoodie. The Redwood Hollow courthouse smelled like old coffee and cheap floor polish. The air conditioning rattled uselessly overhead. Evelyn Brooks sat quietly in the back row of Courtroom 3A. She was 64 years old, her silver-streaked hair pulled into a tight bun. Today she wore gray sweatpants, white sneakers, and a navy hoodie that read Gulf Shores in peeling letters. She looked tired. She looked ordinary, but her eyes missed nothing. She watched the bailiff, Deputy Carson, scrolling lazily through his phone while defendants stood confused. She watched the court clerk snap at a trembling young woman who could barely speak through tears. And most of all, she watched Judge Harold Whitmore. 52 years old, ruddy complexion, too much cologne, hair slicked back like he believed he was on television. He didn't sit on the bench, he lounged. He enjoyed power. 2 weeks earlier, Evelyn's niece had called her in tears. Aunt Evelyn, he gave Marcus 6 months for a first-time noise complaint. He called him a thug in open court. Marcus, her nephew, a pre-med student, no criminal record, no violence, just loud music. That was the moment this stopped being professional and became personal. So Justice Evelyn Brooks of the United States Supreme Court quietly took leave. She told her clerks she was visiting family. She didn't tell them she was hunting a predator. The trap. Evelyn filed a minor zoning dispute using her late mother's former property, a property that no longer even had a structure on it. She intentionally allowed paperwork errors. She intentionally dressed down. She intentionally looked like someone Whitmore would dismiss. Case number 3817, City versus Evelyn Brooks. She walked slowly to the defendant's table. Whitmore didn't look up. "Name," he muttered. "Evelyn Brooks," she replied calmly. He finally glanced at her, then smirked. "Miss Brooks, this is a courtroom, not a grocery store. We do have standards." Laughter trickled through the front row. Evelyn remained steady. "My luggage was misplaced. I believed punctuality outweighed fashion." Whitmore rolled his eyes. "You failed to respond to 3 city notices. Why?" "I never received them. They were sent to the vacant property rather than my primary residence. That violates procedural notice requirements." He froze briefly, then sneered. "Don't quote procedure to me. I am the law in this courtroom." Gasps. He slammed his gavel. $500 fine for the violation. Another $500 for wasting my time. Silence fell. Evelyn's voice lowered, steel wrapped in velvet. "You cannot impose punitive fines without an evidentiary hearing. That violates the 14th Amendment. The room changed. Lawyers turned. That wasn't how defendants spoke. Whitmore barked a laugh. "Oh, please, watching too much legal television? In Redwood Hollow, the Constitution is what I say it is." Evelyn did not blink. "Is that a threat, Judge Whitmore?" "It's a promise. Bailiff, remove her." Deputy Carson grabbed her arm roughly. 30 days, contempt of court, Whitmore added smugly. As they dragged her away, she locked eyes with him. "You've made a catastrophic mistake, Harold." She dropped the honorific. He didn't notice. He thought he had crushed another inconvenience. He had just detonated his own career. The cell. The holding cell was damp and cold. 2 women sat inside, one young and crying, the other bruised and hardened by experience. "What you in for?" the older woman asked. "Contempt of court," Evelyn replied. The woman whistled. "You got a death wish? Whitmore's a tyrant." "Yes," Evelyn said softly, "but tyrants always collapse under their own arrogance." The young girl wiped her tears. "I'm going to lose my job. I couldn't pay bail." "What's your name?" Evelyn asked gently. "Lena." "You won't lose your job," Evelyn assured her. The older woman laughed. "You got 30 days." Evelyn smiled. "He won't forget me, I promise you that." Upstairs, meanwhile, Judge Whitmore was eating a greasy sandwich in chambers, joking with defense attorney Richard Cole. "14th Amendment," Whitmore chuckled. "Who does she think she is?" A knock. The clerk entered, pale as paper. "Judge, there's a call from the governor's office and the Department of Justice." Whitmore frowned. "They're asking about the woman you jailed." "So?" "They didn't call her Ms. Brooks." Silence. "What did they call her?" The clerk swallowed. "They called her Justice Brooks." The sandwich slipped from Whitmore's hand. He rushed to his computer, typed the name. The first image showed a dignified woman in Supreme Court robes standing beside the president. Justice Evelyn Brooks, 3rd black woman appointed to the Supreme Court, known for dismantling judicial corruption. Whitmore's blood turned to ice. Deputy Carson opened the holding cell door with shaking hands. He no longer looked confident. He looked terrified. Justice Brooks," he stammered. "The judge would like to see you in his chambers." Evelyn rose slowly. She didn't rush. She didn't smile. She simply walked past him. The power dynamic had shifted so violently it felt physical. The elevator ride to the 3rd floor was silent except for Carson's heavy breathing. By the time they reached Whitmore's chambers, sweat had soaked through his uniform. He knocked. "Enter," came Whitmore's tight voice. The apology. Judge Harold Whitmore stood in the middle of his office, tie removed, hair combed, hands trembling around a glass of sparkling water. "Justice Brooks," he began, forcing a smile that looked like pain. "There's clearly been a misunderstanding." "If you had known who I was," Evelyn finished calmly, "you would have treated me differently." Whitmore swallowed. "Well, professional courtesy." Evelyn stepped forward. "But because you thought I was just an elderly black woman from 4th Street, you denied me due process." Silence thickened the air. "You fined me without evidence," she continued. "You mocked my appearance. You threatened imprisonment for asserting constitutional rights." "I run a tight courtroom. We get riffraff in here daily." "Do not finish that sentence," Evelyn said quietly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. "I presided over federal terrorism trials for 15 years before joining the Supreme Court. I have never laughed at a defendant." Whitmore's composure cracked. "There is no shed on 4th Street. It was demolished 5 years ago. If you had reviewed the file instead of judging the hoodie, you would know that." His face drained of color. "I didn't come for a zoning violation," Evelyn said. "I came for Marcus." "Your nephew?" "Yes." "You didn't tell me." "That is precisely the point. Justice is not supposed to depend on who someone's aunt is." The recording. Evelyn reached into her pocket. Whitmore flinched. She pulled out a small digital recorder, red light blinking. "I have been recording since I entered the courthouse." Whitmore stared at it as if it were a loaded weapon.
You can't use that. Public official exception, Evelyn replied calmly. But whether admissible or not, I assure you the Judicial Conduct Commission will find it interesting. He circled the desk, desperation replacing arrogance. Let's work something out. Evelyn glanced at the antique clock. It is 1:18 p.m. At this moment, FBI agents are executing search warrants on your home and reviewing financial records connected to the private probation company. Whitmore collapsed into his chair. You didn't think I came alone, did you? She leaned slightly closer. We know about the kickbacks. We know about funneling wealthy defendants to Richard Cole for lighter sentences. We know about the inflated fines targeting minority neighborhoods to justify property seizures. Whitmore began to cry. I have a daughter in college. Evelyn thought of Lena in the holding cell, of Marcus in prison, of hundreds of families displaced. You should have thought about that before destroying other people's families. Knock. Firm. Authoritative. Enter, Evelyn said. The door opened. 2 FBI agents stepped inside. Judge Harold Whitmore, the agent announced. You are under arrest for racketeering, deprivation of civil rights under color of law, and wire fraud. Whitmore looked at Evelyn for mercy. She gave him none. Stand up, Harold. It's time. The public reckoning. They escorted him through the courthouse rotunda in handcuffs. Whispers turned into gasps. Phones came out. Evelyn walked ahead of him, still in her hoodie, still in sneakers, yet she looked like royalty. She stopped in the center of the rotunda. My name is Justice Evelyn Brooks of the United States Supreme Court. Shock rippled through the crowd. For years, this courthouse has operated as a marketplace for injustice. That ends today. She turned toward the attorneys who had laughed earlier. Silence in the face of corruption is complicity. Then toward the families waiting nervously. This building belongs to the people, not to the ego of a judge. Slowly, someone began clapping, then another. Soon the entire courthouse echoed with applause. Not celebration, relief. Whitmore was led out to flashing cameras. Freedom. Bring Lena and the other woman up, Evelyn instructed. Minutes later, they stood blinking in the bright lobby lights. You're free, Evelyn told Lena, tearing the paperwork in half. There is no bail. The order was unlawful. Lena burst into tears. Evelyn handed her a card. This is the number for my education foundation. You call Monday. You're going to school. The older woman looked at Evelyn in awe. You really are karma. Evelyn smiled faintly. Karma is patient. I'm not. The mayor's mistake. But the corruption ran deeper. Mayor Thomas Grady had orchestrated a land grab scheme. Minor violations, excessive fines, foreclosures, luxury condos replacing historic homes. At a local diner that afternoon, Evelyn met with Marcus and a whistleblower, former city planner Daniel Reeves. Reeves opened a binder, emails, bank transfers, evidence. One message from the mayor read, Ramp up the fines. We need the Brooks lot by November. If the old lady won't sell, make her life hell. The diner door opened. Mayor Grady walked in, pale. We can fix this, he pleaded. Evelyn wiped her hands with a napkin. Federal conspiracy carries 20 years, Mr. Mayor. Agent Reynolds stepped forward. Clint Grady, you are under arrest. Handcuffs clicked. Marcus stood tall. I'm not a statistic. I'm pre-med. The dam broke. The entire scheme collapsed within weeks. Developer assets were seized. $42 million recovered. Restorative justice. 3 months later, Justice Brooks filed an unprecedented legal brief. Instead of the seized funds going to federal coffers, she argued they should be placed in a community restorative trust for the displaced families. Judge Alcott ruled in her favor. The money rebuilt the 4th Street district. Homes restored. Families returned. Wealth transferred back where it belonged. Justice wasn't just punishment, it was repair. 1 year later, former Judge Harold Whitmore now answered to inmate 9821. 20-year sentence, appeals denied. The vacant lot on 4th Street became the Brooks Community Legal Center. Marcus finished his first year of medical school with a 4.0 GPA. Lena worked at the legal center while studying paralegal law. Standing outside the new building, Marcus said, "You took down the system." Evelyn shook her head gently. "No, I reminded them the law applies to everyone." She glanced back at the courthouse in the distance. "A judge should always be afraid," she added, "afraid of getting it wrong." As the sun set over Redwood Hollow, the town felt lighter, because they had learned something unforgettable. You can judge a book by its cover, but if you judge a Supreme Court justice by her hoodie, you will lose everything.